my name is Håkon Dahle. I'm not going to talk so much about what's happening inside cells today. I'm a microbial ecologist. So I'm going to talk about how we're looking at entire populations of microorganisms and how they are shaped by the energy availability from the surrounding environment. So I'm working at something called the Center for Deep Sea Research in Bergen. We're located in the Dahle in the fourth floor, and this is a continuation of the Center of Geobiology, which was established around 10 years ago as a Center of Excellence. And one of the things, one of the main things we've been doing over the last 10 years is to do research on deep sea hydrothermal systems. And in particular, we are working in the area between Norway and Greenland on the Arctic mid-ocean ridge, where we see several locations of hydrothermally active locations marked in red here. This is active hydrothermal systems, which are like hot springs just located on the seafloor up to depth down to 2,200 meters. So just to give you some idea about how these systems look like, this is an image from one of these systems with the characteristic hydrothermal chimneys, which are interesting for many reasons. This is proposed as a possible site for the origin of life, for example, and astrobiologists are also very interested in these environments. From my perspective, I'm very also interested in using these systems as natural laboratories, because they're dark environments. Sunlight is not available as an energy source. So these systems are driven exclusively by the energy available from chemical reactions. So, for example, if you look at, you can see some white spots here. These are mats of microorganisms growing on sulfide. So they take sulfide from the environment and use that as an energy source. Well, strictly speaking, that is not really true, because no organism really uses H2S as an energy source. The energy source is really the oxidation of H2S. So they need an electron acceptor, right? So they take oxygen as an electron acceptor. So, and this is an important point also when we talk about energy availability. It's not about single chemical species, but it is the combination of chemical species that define how much energy is available from each of these redox reactions. But another thing is that, of course, these mats, they are, if you look at these high temperature hydrothermal fluids, there might be a lot of H2S in them, so there's no oxygen there. In the seawater, there is no H2S, but a lot of oxygen. So of course, they live in a place where there's mixing between high temperature hydrothermal fluids and seawater. So when you mix these high temperature fluids, which are rich in potential electron donors, with seawater, which are rich in electron acceptors, then you can create energy landscapes. So not only H2S might be present there, but might also be hydrogen. We also have examples of fluids rich in methane. And in the surrounding seawater, we have oxygen, sulfate, nitrate. And as I said, it's interesting then to see what happens when we mix these fluids, because this is what defines the energy landscapes. And this is something we can do in a computer as well. The only thing we need is actually, if you have a sample of these hydrothermal fluids and a sample of seawater, and we know the chemical composition there, then we can start to mix these fluids in silico and model the activities of each of these species. And then when you have the activities in each mixture, it can be hundreds of mixtures, you can just plug that into this equation that gives us the Gibbs energy of the reactions. And so another thing to be aware of here is that when we talk about energy availability, what we mean by that is also a question about what units we use. It can be energy available per electron transferred in the reaction. It can be the energy per mole of substrate consumed, or it can also be the energy measured as the energy density. How much energy is available from a certain redox reaction in a certain volume. So we're not the first to do this. This was the first time this approach was used to describe the energy availability in hydrothermal systems was in 1997. And this is from a more recent study where they compared different hydrothermal systems and calculated energy landscapes, showing that depending on the chemical or the geological setting of a hydrothermal system, we see large variations in energy landscapes. So in some hydrothermal systems, there is a lot of energy available from H2S oxidation. In others, it might be hydrogen. Depends on where you are. If it's in the high temperature areas, it might be sulfate reduction, anaerobic sulfate reduction. That is the main energy source, and so on. It really depends on the exact setting and mixing. So we have also done this for our systems. And we also see a large variability between hydrothermal systems. For example, in some cases, we have typical salt-hosted system with a lot of energy available from H2S oxidation, whereas in other hydrothermal systems, it might be methane oxidation that is a dominant energy source. And then the question is also, how can we go from here to model microbial communities? I mean, one thing is to quantify the energy availability, but also we want to use that to quantify the distribution of functional groups in these environments. So, if we start from a bit theoretical point of view here, we can just make some simple considerations. So, consider, for example, a single cell that uses oxidation of hydrogen as an energy source. So this cell needs a certain amount of energy, right? Or what it actually needs is power. It needs a certain amount of joules per time unit, just like we do. We need to eat a certain amount of food every day. So we are like machines that need a certain power supply. And just to survive, right? So if we can extrapolate from this also and talk about how much power does a certain community need. If you have a community with very few cells, it might have a lower power demand than a community with a high number of cells. And the power is then also defined by the fluxes, right? Concentrations of fluids, of chemical species entering the system, and also the fluxes. The fluxes are often very difficult to quantify, at least in our systems. But it is still, we can use the same logic when also look at relative densities of energy. If, for example, we have a situation where you have fluids rich in hydrogen and sulfate, and very poor in oxygen, entering a system, we can imagine that there is the density of sulfate reduction might be quite high compared to the density of oxygen reduction. Even though, for example, the energy per mole of oxygen reduction is higher. And regardless of the flux, if you just look at the relative density of energy, we can still use the same logic and say that in this system we could expect to see a higher population of sulfate reducers, because the power in any way is higher. So we use this I'm not going to go into detail here, but we use this kind of logic when we developed an algorithm to simulate how microbial communities look like in these systems. And this is what we end up with. We have this is a sort of a translation of the energy landscapes into microbial communities. So then, of course, and the question also comes if this is really, does it have relevance? What happens if you actually go down there and have a look at what organisms that are present and how the communities look like? And it actually seems to match fairly well. For the most dominating groups here, we see that there is a correlation between the relative abundances of these major metabolic groups, and also then what we observed compared to our models. And this is, again, this is based on energy densities. It does not work if you look at the energy available per electron, for example, which is interesting. So far I've been talking about these areas where we have high temperature fluids mixing. When it comes to iron oxidizers, the picture is different. They are present in more low temperature environments. What this study shows is that they are really widely distributed in the fields investigated here. They're present in some microbial mats that are really dominated by iron oxidizers, but they're also widespread in sediments, in iron mounds. So there doesn't seem to be any restrictions regarding whether they have potential to be in an environment, but there is something that shapes the relative abundance of these dysfunctional group. Fortunately, we don't have enough chemical data to really draw the same type of correlations in this case, but we know that there is a lot of energy, the fluxes of, we really believe from our data that the density of iron oxidation is highest in the spots where we see the highest abundances of iron oxidizers. We also put evidence that there is really a lot of iron available compared to, for example, sulfide. So we also wanted to investigate what are really the chemical reason for this. So we had a look at the rare earth element analysis in this case, which can tell us something about the fluid flow patterns in our systems. So what we see is that in the low temperature areas, the fluid flow is disconnected from high temperature areas, and for the chemical reasons that I will not go into detail about now, this can explain also why we have much higher iron sulfide ratios in these environments. So we definitely, there seems to be a close connection between fluid flow patterns, energy landscapes, and community structures in these systems. So just 2 slides now about what we're going to do in the future. We have started to modify our models now. We're trying to incorporate population dynamic models. We have one postdoc and one PhD student working on this. This is, of course, a very simple example, but what we're trying to do is to implement Gibbs energy of redox reactions into these intrinsic growth rates, and also kinetics of uptake of different substrates, so I have a more dynamic model. And also we are using methodologies. Fortunately I have a colleague who is an expert in this. He has developed a nice pipeline where we can reconstruct hundreds of genomes now, or tens or hundreds of genomes from one single sample. It generates a lot of data, but it's then hopefully we will go more into direction of what we've heard about earlier today, and reconstruct metabolic networks, and maybe also link that to energy availability. So I think I will just stop there, and I hope I can convince you that the energy density is an important factor for shaping maybe not only microbial communities, but biological communities in general, and that deep sea hydrothermal systems are excellent natural laboratories to do this kind of research. Thank you for your attention. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to list my this is Rune Stokke. He's here today, and Ida Steen and Ida Fredøy are microbiologists. Jan van der Roost, Arjen Johannessen are PhD students working on iron oxidizers. Frida Lise Doe is a former technician. Ingunn Thorseth, a chemist, and Rolf Birger Pedersen, the head of the center, and a pathologist. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes?
For microbial growth require not only the energy but also the carbon source. And I guess that from your slides that methane and hydrogen together with water between the primary elements, and they produce it, so they're fixated and produce the primary biomass. So you are analyzing this formation of the free energy because of the mixing of the compounds in the external compartment in the water. But how do you understand that this free energy will be transferred to the cell, and the cell can use it for the biosynthetic purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's so far our simulations are very simple, but this is something we incorporated now into the population dynamic models. So we have terms about the maintenance power of the cell, and also how much energy that is needed actually to produce new organic material. So where we sort of assume that we need to build a certain amount of material in order to produce a new cell.
Yeah, so because they are coupled, these two processes of the release of the energy and the biochemical reaction, so they mass transfers, they are coupled, so they have to happen in the same place, but not in the different places.
But that's happening as well. I mean, there is CO2 available for this. I mean, these systems are driven by autotrophs, right? Yeah.